Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A family of Fort Macleod is pleading for help to try and find a man who's been missing since June. Alberta's finance critic blasted the UCP in Calgary over its record and planned to create more jobs. And Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly says it's wrong that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not condemning the Castro family's treatment of the Cuban people. He will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The family of Lane Tailfeathers is pleading for anyone to come forward with information that could help them find him. Tailfeathers has been missing since last month and hasn't returned to his home in Fort Macleod. As Micah Quinn explains, his family says they haven't been able to sleep at night knowing that he's still out there and missing.
Please, if any of you know where my brother is, please just bring him back to us or tell us where he is so we can bring him home.
For Billy J. and Stephen Heavy Shields, it's been a tough few weeks not knowing where Lane Tailfeathers has been.
I'm worried for my family and just how I see them, how they haven't been sleeping well and, waking up all hours of the night. And it's just been really hard on the whole family.
The Fort Macleod RCMP released a statement saying that the man was reported missing by his family on June 20th.
The last time I seen him was in front of my place. He was walking into town. He had torn pants, the styles they wear nowadays, a white t-shirt.
The family has set up a Facebook group for anyone who might have information on Tailfeathers.
We made a group on Facebook called Help Find Lane, Wild Horse Rider. That is his Indian name. We made that group just for updates and to people that want to offer their help or just any kind of ideas or even any information if they want to put there, anonymously even. That's kind of what we did the Facebook page for, and also to provide pictures, to put pictures up there of him and just for support.
Bridge City News reached out to the Fort Macleod RCMP for comment on the missing persons case, and they told us the case is now being handled by the Major Crimes Unit in Edmonton. We reached out to them for comment, but didn't hear back before our broadcast deadline. If you have any information that can help police with their investigation, call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Lethbridge fire crews responded to an apartment fire along the Ash Grove area in the south part of the city around 8:40 p.m. on Tuesday. Crews were quickly able to put out the fire in the basement of an apartment which was contained to one unit. Officials say there were no injuries and damages estimated at $100,000. The investigation continues, but fire officials say it appears as though the blaze was deliberately set. A man dubbed by the Chinese community as the last man in Chinatown is bidding farewell to a Lethbridge legacy. The owner of the Bon-Ton Company, which was a popular Chinese herbal store in its day, has been forced to sell his property. BCN's Naveen Day was at the site and has the story.
Albert Leong spent all of his 80 years of life living here at the Bon-Ton in Lethbridge's Chinatown. That was up until recent years when he had to move out temporarily while his property underwent restoration as a historic site.
After 3 months, they said, in another 3 months. And then, come April, come September. And then all of a sudden, it was 5 years. And they came to me and said, we're out of money. We're going to stop working on it. You have to sell the place.
He says he was forced to sell because renovations would have been too costly. Now, after several generations in his family hands, Leon has turned over the keys of the property to a new owner. He shares with a crowd of supporters how for over 50 years he ran his business not to make money, but to share stories about Lethbridge's Asian history.
Someone to come in and buy a basket, a $10 basket, which I didn't mark up very much, and I'll give it another $2 off. And there's 2 kids, so I give the kids each a little toy. If they didn't come in, I'd be ahead. But I did that all my life. I ran the store for 50 years like that, and I never made a penny. All I had to do is make enough to pay the taxes.
At a farewell gathering which was held outside the store Wednesday morning, members of the community shared stories of visiting Leong's store as a child.
he'd open the apothecary drawers and show me all the treasures inside. And like that's the memories that I have with Albert. And it was just like magic.
Community members say that caution needs to be taken when governments try to preserve history.
I know they're historical and important, but we also have to think of the feelings of that person, because like Albert said, without him here, Chinatown is no more.
The Bo Ong Tong was a popular meeting and leisure destination in Lethbridge's Chinatown. The main floor housed the herbal shop and was a well-frequented location for gambling. The top floor and basement were apartments that were occupied by tenants and Leong himself. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
CASA just announced their grand reopening of the facility earlier this month. It includes the Inside Out exhibit. The display brings together artists from the city of Lethbridge and area and works from the national level. The curator and gallery services manager for CASA, Darcy Logan, says this is an exciting way to showcase the talent of artists in our community.
The one behind me, it's really interesting. The nice thing about these shows is I don't set up a theme for them. I call it the Summer Salon, and I welcome any artist in the community that wants to participate to come out and submit something. And so this painting, The Message to History by Min, I had never met her before, so it was a great opportunity to get to know her and see such an incredible talent working in our region.
The Inside Out exhibit at CASA will run until August the 20th. Lethbridge City Council voted 8-1 to have residents vote on an award system which could begin in 2025. The question on the October 18th municipal election ballot would read, do you support using a award system to elect city councillors starting with the 2025 municipal election? Lethbridge City Council is currently elected at large, meaning that 8 city councillors and 1 mayor serve the entire city. A ward, on the other hand, is a local authority area or electoral district within a municipality. Alberta's finance critic and Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips says many Albertans are frustrated with how new business owners are being shut out of the UCP's Alberta Jobs Now program. Phillips says it's simply because their businesses have been operating for less than a year.
They want to create jobs, are being shut out of this program. So with that, I will hand things over to Sam Bahadur to tell us his story about how Jason Kenney's Jobs Now program has failed his business.
Apparently, I'm disqualified for every program, like whichever program, like I'm just disqualified because I don't have a history of last year's sales or whatever the requirement is. So there's no point I can expect any help.
An Alberta backbencher who was kicked out of the UCP caucus 6 months ago has been welcomed back. Pat Wren was forced to sit as an independent after municipal leaders complained he was not properly representing his constituency in Lesser Slave Lake. The UCP says Wren has worked tirelessly since his removal from caucus to regain the trust of his constituents. It says the caucus voted to welcome him back after it was presented with letters of support, including from several municipalities and the UCP Lesser Slave Lake Constituency Association. An event dubbed the greatest outdoor show on earth is well underway in Calgary. Now, if you want to go to the Calgary Stampede, but are feeling a little apprehensive about being in such close proximity to other people, there are some areas that still have capacity limits to allow for social distancing, like the Western Event Center and Grandstand Show. To enter the concert venue of Nashville North, you'll have to go through a special process.
So the process is when you want to go to Nashville North, so that's the only venue on Stampede Park that would require this process. When you want to go there, you go through the lineup for rapid testing. So we've got 4 spaces to do that. So at 3 of our entrances at Stampede Park, you can choose to do it right away or right by Nashville North. And you either take a picture of your vaccine records, or if you've got the physical paper, whatever is easier, all you need to do is show that. The other option is to do a quick rapid test. So maybe about a minute once you get through the lineup to show your vaccine paper, or you do the rapid test, which is about 25 minutes to get the results back on that. We have found that about 70% of people are choosing to show proof of vaccine. The other 30% are going with that rapid test.
The Calgary Stampede runs through Sunday, July 18th. For our poll question this week, we're asking if you're planning on visiting the greatest outdoor show on earth, the Calgary Stampede, this year. Visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll tabulate the results and have them for you on Friday's newscast. Alberta's police watchdog has launched an investigation after a man died following his arrest by Calgary police officers. Police say they found the driver of a truck on Thursday who was suspected of being intoxicated. After being arrested, the driver complained that he had a lot of pain in his ribs, was assessed by paramedics and released. He later died in hospital after experiencing chest pain. An autopsy of the man was pending. RCMPs say a house fire that killed 7 people in Chestermere, Alberta earlier this month is not suspicious. Police say they received a call early on July 2nd just east of Calgary. 2 families were in the house at the time. 1 man and 4 children were able to escape. A man and woman who were both 38, a 35-year-old woman, 2 12-year-olds, an 8-year-old girl, and a 4-year-old boy were found dead at the scene. BC's Health Minister Adrian Dix says his government will provide more information about the province's handling of a recent heat wave by BC Emergency Health Services. Paramedics and families have complained about issues that left people waiting too long for help as temperatures hit historic highs. Premier John Horgan says his government will provide more details about an investigation by the Coroner Service into the more than 700 deaths in a week that have been linked to the extreme heat. He says Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry will give health authorities more information on how people can best protect themselves from the dangers of high temperatures. The list of wildfires of note in BC has grown to 24 and includes 5 of the 6 fire centres in the province. Only the Coastal Fire Centre currently has no such fires, which pose a threat to public safety. Environment Canada issued heat warnings for many parts of the province, including the West Kootenays, the South Okanagan, and Fraser Canyon, where temperatures are forecast to hit 38 degrees over the next couple of days. A newsletter circulating online from a First Nation community on Vancouver Island says more than 160 unmarked graves have been found at a former residential school site. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he recognizes that the findings deepen the pain of Indigenous people across the country.
More unmarked graves have been found near a former residential school in BC. My heart breaks for the Penelakut tribe and for all Indigenous communities across Canada. I recognize these findings only deepen the pain that families, survivors, and all Indigenous peoples and communities are already feeling, and that they reaffirm a truth that they have long known. To members of the Penelakut tribe, we are here for you. We cannot bring back those who were lost, but we can and we will continue to tell the truth.
The Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese in Victoria has apologized for its role in the operation. Bishop Gary Gordon says the diocese grieves for the victims of the residential school in Cooper Island. In a statement, he says he's committed to the process of healing, reconciliation, and education regarding the tragic history. Manitoba will be allowing fully vaccinated people to go to a movie, museum, or even a Winnipeg Blue Bombers football game beginning on Saturday. Many types of businesses will also be able to expand to 50% capacity, and restaurants will be allowed to stay open later. The province is also raising limits on both indoor and outdoor social gatherings after reaching its COVID-19 vaccination goals ahead of schedule. Close to 78% of eligible people now have at least 1 dose, and more than 58% are fully immunized. Officials with U.S. Homeland Security say they've detected a surge of Cubans trying to flee the island nation amid the country's oppression, poverty, and unrest. They say any migrants intercepted at sea would be returned to their homeland.
The Coast Guard, along with our state, local, and federal partners, are monitoring any activity that may indicate increases in unsafe and irregular maritime migration in the Florida Straits, including unpermitted vessel departures from Florida to Cuba. The time is never right to attempt migration by sea. To those who risk their lives doing so, this risk is not worth taking. Allow me to be clear. If you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States.
Toronto Sun columnist and one of our regular contributors, Mr. Brian Lilly, says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has not been condemning the treatment of the Cuban people by the Castro family, and he says that's wrong.
Cuba has been run under a dictatorship for decades now, and that alone should be enough to have them condemned, but Justin Trudeau simply couldn't do it. He's being called out by media outlets for it, and I have to say, they're right on this. You can't admire someone's basic dictatorship as they're suppressing the basic human rights of their own people. And that's what's happening in Cuba right now. People are, it's a combination of a lack of medicine and food, frustration over COVID measure restrictions, all of this taking to the point where Cubans were actually demonstrating in the streets, unheard of, chanting freedom. And when the police and military went in to shut it down, Trudeau was not there to say, not there to condemn it.
Brian Lilly will also talk about how a missionary couple in their 80s was recently handed a huge fine for not booking a quarantine hotel. He'll have details coming up later in our broadcast. Officials in Florida say at least 95 are now known dead in the Miami area condo collapse. While the future of the collapse site still remains unclear, the mayor of Surfside, Florida says some residents want the tower rebuilt on part of it.
85 of these victims have been identified and 85 next of kin have been notified. It's a scientific, methodical process to identify human remains. As we've said, this work is becoming more difficult with the passage of time, and although our teams are working as hard as they can, it takes time.
Some of the families also want to go back and live there again. They want the building rebuilt on a portion of the site. They acknowledge that a percentage of that site is a holy site, as I've said before, but they haven't given up on their home.
Meanwhile, the city of Tampa Bay, Florida is celebrating its third boat parade celebration in the past year, this time to celebrate the Tampa Bay Lightning's back-to-back Stanley Cup titles. The Lightning defeated the Montreal Canadiens 4-1 to win their third Stanley Cup. Some are calling the region Champa Bay since the NFL's Buccaneers won the Super Bowl in February. That was also followed by a boat parade. Anchorage may be Alaska's biggest city with nearly 300,000 residents, but it still attracts the wildlife for which Alaska is known. One bear was caught on camera rummaging through someone's garbage looking for a snack. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game says Anchorage residents share the city with up to 350 American black bears and up to 65 brown bears. That bear looked pretty hungry. Environment Canada issued a heat warning for southwestern Alberta once again today, and the hot temperatures will be sticking around for the rest of the week. Complete weather details are coming up. Hopefully you lathered up with some sunscreen if you headed out earlier today. We reached over 30 degrees once again. We had a heat warning once again from Environment Canada as well, and that should continue, plus some of the smoky conditions from coming over the Rockies from BC as well. Jeanette Roche is back with a look at the long-range weather forecast. Jeanette, the hot summer sun will be sticking around for quite some time here in Lethbridge?
Yes, well, as you did mention, Hal, that heat warning is back in effect for Lethbridge and the surrounding areas of southern Alberta. Should remain for a few days as temperatures are still soaring into those 30s with high humidexes as well, also in the 30s, and some haziness as well. Into tonight, we could get a risk of some thunderstorms. Into tomorrow, Thursday, though, 33 is the high with lots of sunshine. Haziness as well. 32 on Friday, 32 for Saturday, 34 Sunday, and then up to 35 on Monday and 33 for Tuesday. So we are just remaining up there in very high temperatures, lots of sunshine as well. 26 degrees is our average high for this time of year, so not so much this week anyway. We're well above that. 10 degrees is the average low. 35 was our high temperature back in 1953, and in 2005, rather, we had our lowest on record, which was only 5 degrees. Sun rose this morning at 5:40 a.m. and our sunset for this Wednesday evening, 9:35 p.m. So just a little under that 16-hour of daylight mark. As we look to the west coast, we're seeing lots of sunshine in Victoria, 22 degrees, of course, the Juan de Fuca Strait. High winds there, about 50 km per hour. 23 in Vancouver with a mix of sun and cloud. High heat as well for both Edmonton and Calgary. Heat warnings are in effect there. Sunshine in Edmonton, Calgary looking at a 30% chance of showers and a risk of an afternoon thunderstorm tomorrow. Into tomorrow, also 35 degrees in Saskatoon, looking at a risk of a thunderstorm. They're also very hazy as the air quality is very poor there, and in Winnipeg as regional forest fires in those areas are causing that poor air quality. So be aware of that. 27 degrees the high in Toronto tomorrow with showers. Lots of sunshine in Ottawa though, 29 degrees. Showers again in Montreal with a high of 27. Also a risk of a thunderstorm tomorrow, possibly in Montreal as well. As we look to Fredericton, we're seeing a chance of showers, high of 26. Showers in Halifax, high of 22, 24 the high in Charlottetown with a chance of thunderstorm as well. Lots of sunshine in the St. John's, Newfoundland with a high of 24. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you by Jeff Reimer of Royal LePage South Country Real Estates, 403-380-1779.
The Bank of Canada says it sees the risks from COVID-19 waning, but not enough to change its trend-setting interest rate. The central bank held its rate steady at 0.25% as it lowered expectations for economic growth this year from 6.5% to 6%. It cited a weaker first half of the year than expected as the economy was hampered by COVID-19 lockdowns and restrictions. But with restrictions lifted in many parts of the country, now it boosted its growth next year from 3.7% to 4.6%. Royal Bank of Canada is creating hybrid flexible work arrangements for its employees and does not plan any one-size-fits-all mandates on how much time its staff will need in the offices when they reopen. Decisions on working arrangements will be made to match employees' diverse experiences and their clients' needs. Now, in contrast to Wall Street, top Bay Street executives seem to be in no hurry to end remote work. Some say the arrangement has been made very efficient and profitable. Some acknowledge that their employees have little desire to return to the office 5 days a week. Stats Canada says manufacturing sales fell 0.6% in May from the previous month to $57.9 billion. The second consecutive monthly decline came as machinery sales dropped almost 17% after hitting a record high in April. The decrease was mainly due to lower sales of agricultural, construction, and mining machinery. Chemical and fabricated metal industries also declined, offsetting a 6.1% gain in wood product sales, helped by higher prices. 2 more California men have pleaded guilty for their roles in a $1.3 billion real estate fraud scheme. Court records show that Dane Roseman and Ivan Acevedo pleaded guilty in Miami federal court to participating in a massive investment fraud scheme in which more than 7,000 victims suffered financial losses. Co-defendant Robert Shapiro, the former owner and CEO of Woodbridge Group of Companies, was previously sentenced to 25 years in prison for orchestrating the scheme. Woodbridge sales managers Roseman and Acevedo will be sentenced in September. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 123 points in the day to finish at 20,147. The Dow was up 44 points to 34,933. The S&P 500 was up 5 points to 4374. And the Nasdaq was down 32 points to 14,644. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $2.12 to $73.13 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to $3.65 US. Gold was down 24 cents to $18.27.29 US an ounce, and silver was even at $26.25 US an ounce. Wheat is at $379 per metric ton. Barley's at $372. Canola's at $8.96, and corn is at $410 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 50 cents to $121.25. Feeder cattle were down $1.88 to $156.95, and lean hogs were down 83 cents to $105.10. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.92 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Lethbridge City Council voted 8-1 to have residents vote on a ward system which could begin in 2025. The question on the October 18th municipal election ballot would read, do you support using a ward system to elect city councillors starting with the 2025 municipal election? Lethbridge City Council is currently elected at large, meaning that 8 councillors and 1 mayor serve the entire city. Many Canadians are concerned that vaccine passports may be on the way. That means you won't be able to travel or even dine at certain restaurants without one. Now, Premier Jason Kenney said no to vaccine passports here in Alberta, but what about other provinces? Political reporter Brian Lilly will give us his thoughts next. But first, here's what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Fort Whoop-Up and New West Theatre are partnering up to provide a fun and exciting dinner theater experience called Trader Tales, taking place Friday, July 23rd from 6 to 9 p.m. Take in a private tour of the fort, enjoy a relaxing wagon ride, and delicious dinner. The evening culminates with an intimate performance featuring New West Theatre actors. Cost is $45 per person. For tickets, visit fort.galtmuseum.com. Looking for some summer fun and faith-filled adventures for your kids? Park Meadows Baptist Church presents Treasured Vacation Bible School, taking place July 26th to the 30th from 9 to 11:30 a.m. each day. Your kids will embark on an epic quest through hidden ruins and ancient caves to discover that they are God's greatest treasure. Cost is $10 per child and open to kids ages 4 to 11. For more information and to register, visit parkmeadowschurch.ca. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
You know, many Canadians are really concerned that vaccine passports may be on the way. That means you won't be able to access certain businesses or government institutions without one. To discuss this in more detail is Toronto Sun columnist and one of our regular contributors, Mr. Brian Lilly. Brian, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has already said no chance to the idea of vaccine passports, but not all premiers really agree.
No, they don't. And it is really a provincial issue. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about this earlier in the week. He said that, he's working on what amounts effectively to a vaccine passport for you and I if we're traveling outside of the country, because many countries will require proof of vaccination, and that they want Canadians to be able to say, yes, I was vaccinated, let me into your country. And the federal government is also going to be checking travelers coming in. But as far as, going to your local businesses, a restaurant, a store, going into your office, that is at the provincial level. Jason Kenney has said no for Alberta. Scott Moe said no for Saskatchewan. And Doug Ford here in Ontario has said no as well. BC still toying with the idea. And Quebec says they may go to that if there's a fourth wave in the fall as a way to keep businesses open. Because if you're not vaccinated and they get a fourth wave, then you may not be allowed to go to the gym or a cafe, let's say. That's kind of the direction that France has gone. France is even mandating that healthcare workers get vaccinated or face sanctions, perhaps even be fired by September 15th. But that isn't the way that we're going here, thankfully. Now, there are businesses and schools that are saying you won't be allowed on campus if you're not vaccinated. But all of those, in my view, and speaking with several lawyers on this, is those will end up with court challenges. If the government did it, pal, it would be a charter challenge. But when it's a private business, and that could include a college or university, when they're doing it, it tends to fall under things like privacy laws or healthcare acts, which, both Alberta and Saskatchewan have healthcare acts that forbid you from being forced to present your own personal medical information, which is essentially what this is. So it's going to be an interesting time over the next little while as we sort this out. But so far, premiers of the big provinces are mostly saying no.
A missionary couple in their 80s, Brian, was handed a substantial fine for arriving in Canada and not booking at a quarantine hotel. Now, what can you tell us about Glenn and Thelma Perry?
Well, Glenn is 87 years old. Thelma is 80 years old. And they live just north of Toronto in a place called Barrie, Ontario. They do missionary work in Jamaica. They go down and they're helping people who are not well off. They're looking after the least fortunate among us. And they came back 2 hours and 6 minutes before the rules changed on July the 5th. It's remarkable that this couple, who I'm told their combined income for the year is about $12,000 a year. The church pays for them for their flights to go down to Jamaica and do this work. They make about $12,000 a year. The fine was $6,000.
Wow.
More than $6,000. Each of them had a ticket in excess of $3,000 because they didn't book the COVID hotel. They could have just, if you wanted to be a stickler, you could have just kept them at the airport and said, you're not leaving this area until 12:01 when the new rules kick in. So their local MP, a conservative named John Brassard, he's gotten involved. He's asked the health minister, Patty Hajdu, and the public safety minister, Bill Blair, to show some compassion, show some common sense, and just waive these tickets. And hopefully that's the final outcome of this.
Yeah, let's pray for the best for both Glenn and Thelma Perry. Brian, it appears as though the Canada-U.S. border will remain somewhat closed until July 21st. Now, the United States wants it open, but what are the Trudeau Liberals saying?
Well, they're talking about it eventually opening, but it's hard to get a clear read. And here we are just a week away from this potential reopening. A lot of people thought when the last extension went in that this would be the last. There are moves, as you know, Hal, I know you're a big sports fan. There are moves to get the Toronto Blue Jays playing back in Toronto on by the end of July, July 30th. There are moves to have, Toronto FC and the Vancouver Whitecaps allowed to be able to play at home. That would require at least some reopening of the border. As far as regular citizens go, it's really unclear. The Americans want it open. Chuck Schumer, leading Democrat from New York, has called for it to be open. There have been demonstrations, rallies, press conferences in the U.S. saying we need the border open. We want to get back to normal. But I'll tell you this, based on what the PM said, even if we do open it up, it won't be back to normal the way it was before.
The tourism sector has really taken a massive hit during the pandemic, Brian, and the Prime Minister says he will not be allowing unvaccinated visitors into Canada anytime soon. And that's not good news for our relatives who want to visit us from Europe or maybe South America.
There's several things here, and this is what I mean when I say that even if he opens the border, it won't get back to the way it was before. Unvaccinated people will not be allowed in for some time, is what the Prime Minister said. We also have concerns, though, of okay, if someone did get vaccinated, did they get the right vaccines? Right now, you're only allowed to skip the hotel quarantine if you're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident who flies back into the country and you've had one of the 4 approved by Canada vaccines. If you had a different one in Europe, in the Middle East, in Russia, in China, if you had those at this point, you're not allowed in. So the government is trying to work through those. It's going to take quite a bit of time before we start getting back to what we were seeing before. A lot of tourists from the United States who will want to come up won't be vaccinated at all, and we won't be letting them into this country for the foreseeable future.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been in campaign mode, Brian, making stops in Calgary with that big recent transit announcement, and in BC promising $10 a day childcare. He also signed a similar deal with Nova Scotia. Now, you say the numbers of this Quebec-style national daycare program really don't add up. Can you explain?
Well, the idea behind the Quebec program is that it's universal. It costs $10 a day. And as every Albertan can tell you, Quebec can only do that because of equalization payments, $15 billion a year, much of which has come from Alberta over the past decade or so. The numbers that the Prime Minister was talking about in BC, I took a hard look at them, did up a column on the topic, and they don't add up. In British Columbia, it was a promise of $3.2 billion over 5 years. When you work it out by the number of children under the age of 6, because that's what this is for, kids 5 and under, it works out, Hal, to $8.95 a day, for the work week. The cost of childcare in Richmond, British Columbia goes as high as $59 a day. So the government's promising $10 a day daycare. It currently costs $59. That means there's another $51.05 that has to be made up somewhere else. Now, I know that not every kid goes into daycare, but if you're going to call it a universal program, if you're going to call it this $10 a day system, then you better deliver. And right now, they're not.
The election speculation is not stopping, Brian, with all of the recent funding announcements, but Nova Scotia Premier Rankin could actually derail Trudeau's plan for a federal election. Can you explain why?
Well, generally speaking, parties of the federal government doesn't like going into an election when there's a provincial one, especially not if it's one that the governing party is friendly to. Elections Nova Scotia held a tech briefing this week for journalists on how the vote will take place. So they are going full steam ahead towards an election. It could change the Prime Minister's plans, which we're told at this point would involve about a month from now, dropping the writ. The new Governor General gets installed on July 26th. We have the August long weekend, and then shortly after that, we head into a campaign with voting day in early to mid-September. So if Nova Scotia, where the Liberals do have a number of seats and where they want to continue to hold those seats, if they're both campaigning at the same time, it makes it more difficult. You tend to use the same volunteers. People who are politically active are often active at both the provincial and the federal level. So they're going to lose a lot of volunteers. They're going to be confusing voters there.
Right.
So we'll have to wait and see. The Prime Minister was asked about it. He played coy. Premier Rankin played coy. But this could become a determining factor. All I can tell you, Hal, is there is the possibility of an increase in cases. I don't think it'll be a fourth wave with a lot of people going to hospital and dying like we saw in the past. But the Prime Minister still wants this election out of the way before COVID numbers start rising again in the fall.
Brian, the federal Liberals recently shot down an attempt to probe the use of taxpayer money to pay for a key campaign worker. What was the issue here?
The issue is a guy named Tom Pitfield, who's been friends with Justin Trudeau since they were children. Tom Pitfield's father was the clerk of the Privy Council to Pierre Trudeau. So Tom and Justin grew up together. Tom Pitfield was in Justin Trudeau's wedding party and works on campaigns. His wife is the former president of the Liberal Party of Canada, and they all went on that infamous vacation to the Aga Khan's billionaire island. The illegal vacation, by the way. So Tom Pitfield also owns a company called Data Sciences that has been used as a vendor by the Liberals in the last several elections. They, as the name would suggest, are involved in using data to target voters. They collect all the information they can on you. They customize messages towards you. Tom Pitfield runs this company. Turns out that it has been, they've been getting money out of what's called the member's office budget. So individual MPs signing up in a coordinated fashion to pay for this company to do constituency work. So they're doing the voter work, and in between elections, they get government money to keep them going. The Conservatives and the NDP and the Bloc all said, this looks a little funny, we want to look into it. The Liberals talked and talked and talked. It was supposed to be a 2-hour committee meeting to set up an investigation. Instead, the Liberals talked out the clock. When one member had to leave the room, a New Democrat had to leave the room to take a phone call, they immediately moved to say, we want to adjourn the meeting. You can't raise a point of order or stop an adjournment vote. So it was shot down very quickly in an underhanded way. When they're trying that hard not to have things looked at, makes me think that maybe we really should be looking into it.
The protests continue in Cuba as locals are angry and are calling for an end to restrictions. The word freedom could be heard echoing through the streets of both Havana and Veradero. Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole issued a clear statement standing with the Cuban people against the Castro dictatorship. But Trudeau, when asked, didn't really condemn the crackdown by the Cuban government. Could this have something to do with the history between the Trudeaus and the Castros?
My guess is yes, and the fact that he does have a tendency to like dictators. His brother once described Fidel Castro as superhuman, referred to him as Uncle Fidel, I believe, in an op-ed that ran in Canada's largest newspaper. Fidel Castro spoke at Pierre Trudeau's funeral. Now, Fidel Castro obviously passed on, but his family remains in control. Cuba has been run under a dictatorship for decades now, and that alone should be enough to have them condemned, but Justin Trudeau simply couldn't do it. He's being called out by media outlets for it, and I have to say, they're right on this. You can't admire someone's basic dictatorship as they're suppressing the basic human rights of their own people, and that's what's happening in Cuba right now. People are it's a combination of a lack of medicine and food, frustration over COVID measure restrictions, all of this taking to the point where Cubans were actually demonstrating in the streets, unheard of, chanting freedom. And when the police and military went in to shut it down, Trudeau was not there to say, not there to condemn it. He was rather weak in his words on this front.
Now, Brian, before I let you go, I want to try and get an update from you in regards to Bill C-6, which is potentially modifying the criminal code to include conversion therapy. What's the latest?
There's no moves. I mean, there was some discussion about having it looked at over the summer by senators. That hasn't happened yet. Whether they will try and hold some meetings over the summer months and try and pass it remains to be seen. If not, it'll come back in the fall. That is, of course, unless we go to an election, at which point the bill will be dead in the water. As we've discussed before, a lot of people thinking that the language in the bill is too vague can lead to a lot of people facing criminal charges over things that should never end up before the courts.
Political reporter and Toronto Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
The COVID-19 pandemic, with its restrictions, has certainly altered our normal routines and recreational pursuits. Now, one of the interesting fallouts has been an increase in people buying collectibles such as hockey cards, which was very popular when I was a kid. Joining me now to talk about it is Grant Gatto. He's the manager of Pirates Cove, a collectibles and memorabilia store located right here in Lethbridge. Grant, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me.
Now, are you seeing the same thing here in southern Alberta? Have you had more people come in looking for trading cards right now?
Oh, very much so. We got our store here and our store in Strathmore. We've noticed an increase in both places. I think a lot of people are stuck at home. They're either digging their old collections out of the closet or they're binging some old media that's spurring the urge on again.
You know, it's funny. I think I must have around 600 or 700 hockey cards. A lot of the old mid to late 70s O-Pee-Chees. Are they still pretty hot right now? A hot item, the O-Pee-Chees?
They are very much so. And the problem with a lot of that, though, is everybody's digging that out of their closet. And the Chinese factories that make all the supplies for it, they've been shut down. So there's been a back order for almost every single supply industry wide for the last year, too. Because so many people are getting back into it.
You know, maybe I should bring some of my cards into you then, and you can appraise them, and maybe I can sell some of them to you, too.
We'd love to see them, for sure.
So outside of just being stuck at home and maybe reliving some great memories from the past as kids, why do you think people are collecting a lot of these cards right now and other memorabilia right now?
Well, there's a little bit of extra money rolling around with the benefits checks. We've noticed that the money definitely flows that way. And there's some people that are out of work and they're hoping for making a little side money on it too. If you've had something that's been in the closet for 10 years, you need some extra bucks, yeah, it's time to part with it.
How about in the closet for 45 years? You know, it's funny, I have this collection.
Even better.
I have this collection of O-Pee-Chees that are rounded on the corners and they're autographed. Like it's, you know, like
Nice.
Daryl Sittler, Lanny McDonald, you know, Guy Lafleur, Larry Robinson, Rogie Van Shawn, you know, there's a set of 21. They were all autographed,
Excellent.
not like original autographs, of course, but from the factory, right? I guess that might be worth a
Yeah.
few bucks.
Oh, for sure. And there's a lot of people trying to finish those sets. So bring those in if you're interested in parting with them.
Now, I heard something recently I was reading a story about a Wayne Gretzky rookie hockey card that brought in over $1 million.
Yeah, that's when you get into the graded cards. When you with some collectibles, you have the option of getting them graded. So you can send it away to a professional. They'll review it, analyze it, appraise it, and put on a scale of 1 to 10 on, or depending on the industry, coins are a little different, on how good that is. That particular Gretzky was a perfect 10 out of 10, best one that's ever been graded or checked. So that one's a bit of an anomaly. Normally they go for about $1,500 to $2,000-ish, depending on shape.
So is Gretzky still a popular card, regardless if it's a rookie card or not?
Yeah, Gretzky, at the last time I checked and I was pricing some stuff out, he has over 52,000 individual different hockey cards. So somebody could just collect Gretzky, go broke, and still not even be a tenth of the way there.
So what are some of the other big names that people are looking to collect outside of Gretzky? Maybe a Bobby Orr rookie card? How about Guy Lafleur, Daryl Sittler, some of those other names?
You can't go wrong with any of the Hall of Famers. There's always going to be a market for those guys. But there's so many new rookies every year. There's a new crop coming up, and that keeps the hobby going fresh.
Now, outside of hockey cards, how about maybe football or baseball or even basketball cards?
Running into the same supply issue problems with those. They're heavily collected. They're underproduced right now, and whatever's being made is getting picked up by scalpers and flipped on eBay. The stuff that we can find, it's just the crazy high-end stuff where $300 or $400 a pack, you get 2 cards in it. But it's really, really nice stuff to make up for it.
You know, it's funny, I'm just thinking back to a lot of these rare hockey cards I had, and I put them into the spokes of my bicycle when I was a kid, you know, and now here we are 40 years later, these things could probably pay off the mortgage to my house if I would have taken better care of them, right?
I am glad you did that, and I'm glad for all the mothers that threw away the collections, because I wouldn't be in business if everybody kept their stuff. It wouldn't be worth anything.
Now, Grant, you also have a great selection of Hot Wheels vehicles. You know, it's not just kids, but a lot of adults. I mean, I've been into your shop and I purchased a 65 Fastback Mustang Hot Wheel to add to my little collection as well. Are Hot Wheels still a hot item?
Oh, for sure, for sure. They're priced perfect for collectors. $2 a car. They're priced perfect for kids. And the way that they're marketed too, they've got the mainline ones, hundreds of different options a year. Uh, you could collect all those and not get into the higher end stuff. Now, Hot Wheels also have what they call treasure hunt cars. And when a store gets a case of 72 cars, only one in there is going to be marked as a treasure hunt car. And they usually have a little flame symbol on there to show you what you're after. And those are highly sought after. And there's even one step above super treasure hunts that the collectors go crazy for. They come with real rubber tires and fancier metal flake paint jobs.
Grant, would you say that maybe some of the muscle cars, like the American muscle cars, are hot items? Some of the Mopars, the Chargers, you know, the Challengers, and then also the Mustangs and Camaros?
Definitely. In the Hot Wheels and in the bigger 1/18 scale cars too, the muscle cars in the bigger scale, you definitely can't keep in stock. And that's another one where they'll produce a batch and then you don't get your 65 Mustang, you better hope that somebody saved it on their shelf and is willing to part with it.
I saw as well there was a Mustang, I think it was a VW bus with a surfboard on it that went for over, was it over $100,000 or something? One Hot Wheel?
Yeah, the original releases, they call them the Sweet 16 cars, and there's some crazy little variations where they might have ran out of paint at the factory, so we'll just finish up the day with this other paint and call it good. But 40, 50 years later, those cars from the end of the batch are rare as heck and very, very expensive.
Now, what about some of the other types of toy cars like dinky cars? Are they still quite popular or is there more Hot Wheels?
Uh, there's so many different ones. Hot Wheels is good for the average collector, but the older collectors, they love getting into the dinky toys. Any of the older Matchbox, the Lesney toys. Yeah, there's always going to be a market for those. And the trick is finding them in good shape because most of them spent the last 40 years buried in a garden someplace.
You know, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I've seen some people that have, you know, antique toys still in the box, never been touched by human hands, which are worth a fortune. But then at the same time, I'm thinking, what a sad childhood. You never had a chance to play with your toy, right?
Open it and play with it. Even when I sell something expensive here, a mint in package transformer from the 1980s, I tell a person, open it, put the stickers on it, enjoy it. That's what it was meant for. You're the last buyer. That's what it's, enjoy it.
So what are some of the older toys you have in your store there, Grant?
It's always changing. We rely on trades for a lot of stuff, so it's kind of whatever comes through the door. We've had a lot of old tin toys from the early 1900s come through here. I remember having a little toy wind-up boat with a propeller on the end of it. It was from about the 1940s, and every single time I picked that up, it drew blood. Every corner on it was razor sharp, and it was a children's toy from back in your grandpa's day. It's a miracle they made it to this age.
Wow. How about for the ladies and the young ladies too, like classic Barbies? I bet you they're fetching a good penny too, some of the dolls.
They are. We don't have many come through here though, unfortunately. I don't know if that stuff ends up in the antique shops or not. I wouldn't turn it away if it did come in, but yeah, few and far between, I hate to say. I think a lot of the Barbie collectors, they hold on to it forever. I don't blame them.
How about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? That was also pretty big when I was a kid. Is it popular now?
Not as much as it used to be, but anytime we get some of the old vintage toys, even the loose ones, out of package, missing all the accessories, I'll throw them in the dollar bin and they'll be gone the same day. People want them just to put on the shelf because they probably lost the accessories that quick when they were a kid anyway, so it looks just like they remembered.
How about some Star Wars memorabilia? Do you have much of that too?
Lots and lots of Star Wars stuff. It's been suffering the last couple of years since Disney took over. They really hurt the brand, unfortunately. It probably dropped about to 10% of what it was before. Hopefully, the way the Mandalorian's been going is picking things back up and salvaging that. But thankfully, Star Trek is on a second and third renaissance, and it's bringing in a lot of collectors too.
You know, I joke with a lot of my buddies too. I said there were only 3 Star Wars movies: Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. There was nothing else after that. They're like, "Oh, you've missed out on so many great movies, Hal." You know.
and lots of good books.
Oh yeah, now speaking of which, let's talk about comic books. What kind of old comic books are people really interested in?
The comic books, it's another one where unfortunately a lot of the industry is shifting towards digital. Like you buy a new comic now, and almost all of them come with another digital copy that you can download and read on your phone. That way you can grab the original, bag it away, and put it in the closet and never have to touch the thing. But I think that kind of goes against the spirit of comics. So we always sell our comics half price, even the old ones. We want to get the young collectors in there and keep them interested. And if you can trick a kid into reading with a comic book, not a bad thing either. So
I'm wondering if maybe some of the comic books went up in value with the release of some of these Marvel and DC movies.
they definitely did. I had an Iron Man #1 issue, and it booked in at $80, and it sat on my shelf for probably 4 years and didn't move. The movie came out, and just for giggles, I checked the price. It jumped to $1,000. I changed the price to $1,000. It sold within a week.
Wow, that is amazing. That's a pretty good profit. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I get for carrying it for 35 years.
Well, I guess if you spread it out over that period of time, you're right. Grant, how about old coins? Do you carry many of those?
Yeah, lots of old coins. That's We got to rely on trade because coins you can't really order from a supplier. You have to wait for Grandpa's coin collection to come in here, but we specialize in that. And with silver doing a bit of a run or two commodity wise, it's hard to keep in stock. So we're always looking for people to bring in their coin collections.
Instead of just old collectible coins, what about coins that have been discontinued? Let's say the German Deutschmark. I've got a whole bunch of those at home, and maybe some Italian lira that no longer exist. Are they worthless, or are they actually worth some money?
Kids love them because they're like pirate treasure. We've got a great big bin of 3 for $1 coins, and that's where all my weird foreign stuff goes. And kids will get a great big bag, and it's cheap as heck to get out of here. And they got a pretty good fancy collection. Because a lot of those coins, especially the foreign ones, are really neat.
What are some of the more unusual items that you carry that collectors may be interested in?
We've had some weird things come through here. I've had some coal brought up from the wreck of the Titanic. Um, Little Aztec statue and a meteorite. I wanted to rub them together and see if I got superpowers, but the boss advised me against that one.
That's good. Now, do you have a lot of regulars who come in, usually, picking up items from you, maybe selling you items at the same time? Kind of like what we see with Pawn Stars, when people go in and they're always buying and selling from Rick and the guys? Not that you have a pawn shop, you've got a collector's shop, obviously, but.
We've got a nerdy version of that. I don't take offense to that, because, we got to get our stuff from somewhere, and it's people bringing them in.
So if a viewer has some old stuff, like we mentioned, sitting in the garage or maybe tucked away somewhere in an old desk, cards, coins, comics, magazines, they shouldn't throw them away. They should maybe give you a call, see if something you might be interested in purchasing.
Oh, for sure. You never know what has value. One person's trash is another person's collectible. So, bring it in, especially if it's something that's been sitting in there for, years. There's a fine line between collector and hoarder. So maybe somebody will appreciate better than you. Bring it in. We'll definitely give you better than a garage sale for it, and we'll find somebody who will appreciate it properly.
So how do you actually figure out the value on it? Let's go back to some of the hockey cards, because we're Canadian. We love hockey here in Canada. Let's say I bring in my Joe Sakic. I've got a rookie Joe Sakic. I've got a rookie Matt Sundin. I've got a rookie Ed Belfour. Do you actually look it up? Do you have a guide where you look up the pricing?
Oh, yeah. The good thing about cards is since 1990, there's been a magazine come out called The Beckett, and it's pretty much the Bible on anything close to cardboard. We just look up the price on there. You know what the price is on there, and then we go back and forth and find something comfy.
And to make sure that a card's in good shape, so the corners should not be bent at all, I guess, no creases in it.
Yeah, they want to be as crisp and perfect and fresh out of the pack as possible. But when you get to the older cards, that's just not possible. So you got to have a little bit of leeway for that. A lot of them were cut really, really crooked right from factory, because a lot of them were hand cut instead of machine cut. You might see the picture or part of the card next to it bleeding over onto it. You got to have some leeway for that. You're not going to get your $1 million Gretzky, but if you have a dog-eared Gretzky, you still got several $100s. So,
and I guess we shouldn't laminate it either, right? Because that may damage the card.
No, definitely not. That's a hard no. We've had so many good ones come through here, and it's just heartbreaking because they'll either take a hole punch and then pin it up to their bedroom walls, or laminate it, or tape it into a book, into a photo album, and it cooks the card, but maybe it'll fill somebody's set for a lot cheaper than buying a mint version would be.
Okay, before I let you go, I got to ask you one more thing. I'm a big fan of lava lamps. Are they still popular? Are they making a comeback? Please tell me they're making a comeback, lava lamps. Not the blue and the yellow ones. I'm talking about the red ones, right? They actually look like lava.
They never went away. My son has one for a nightlight that, we just bought them a couple weeks ago, and it's fantastic.
That is awesome. Glad to hear that. Thanks so much for joining us today and the trip down memory lane, Grant. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Grant Gatto, he's the manager of Pirates Cove Collectible Shop here in Lethbridge. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless, and thanks so much for joining us.